talking myself out of 1988. As the old man, Richard Nixon, had taught me 20 years before, I had taken out a yellow legal pad and listed side by side the arguments for and the arguments against running for president. While the heart said yes, the head said no. Despite the enthusiasm in that living room, virtually no one there believed I could be elected. Only a few thought we had a remote chance at the nomination. Alan Reiskind, a personal friend for 2 decades, brought up a national poll showing that while my name recognition was higher than Jack Kemp's, I had a 4-3 negative rating among Republicans and Independents to Jack's 5-2 positive. Alan's lead article that weekend in Human Events, while lauding me for all I had done for the movement, what elevates Buchanan above the common politician is his extraordinary capacity to define life and death issues in a powerful rhetorical style that moves men to action, pointedly noted that most conservatives felt the likely consequence of my candidacy would be to kill off the man many regard as the most viable conservative candidate on the horizon, Jack Kemp. Looking down the yellow pad, I reviewed the arguments in favor. 1. The movement would be galvanized. 2. Our issues would be elevated. 3. The GOP would be pulled in a conservative direction. 4. I would have entered a strong claim to succeed Ronald Reagan as leader of our movement. 5. It would be exhilarating and great fun. What did I have to lose? Unfortunately, a great deal. If a Buchanan candidacy could not capture the nomination but did succeed in mortally wounding the campaign of Jack Kemp, a friend, it could fairly be said that I had crippled the conservative cause by indulging myself in the worst kind of dog-in-the-manger politics. A parade of Kemp's staffers and supporters had urged me to give Jack 6 months to prove himself. Already a Buchanan-Kemp preliminary bout was shaping up as the bloodbath Brother Lofton relished. My old buddy from the Reagan White House, Ed Rollins, now Kemp's campaign manager, was trashing me, and baby sister was reciprocating. Starting out at 7% in the polls, Jack Kemp has risen after 2 years of campaigning to 7%, Bay was quoted as telling an amused national press. Tom Winter, publisher of Human Events and a friend to us both, had warned at my house that night that whatever my decision, Jack Kemp deserved better than what the militant New Right seemed to have in mind. Indeed he did, but there was another side to the Kemp question that troubled me. While Jack and I were friends and allies and agreed on almost every issue, we came to our beliefs from different backgrounds, and we champion our cause in different ways. A convert to the supply-side faith, Jack Kemp speaks with the zeal of the convert, but he is at his most passionate when preaching about tax rates, monetary reform, the gold standard, and the interrelationships between investment and saving and entrepreneurship and opportunity. To me, economics is an inexact science. It is not a matter for moral certitude, and Mazzini was more right than Marx. Ideas rule the world and its events. A revolution is a passage of an idea from theory to practice. Whatever men say, material interests never have caused and never will cause a revolution. Economics is not the science that sends men to the barricades. The Abraham Lincoln Battalion did not march into Franco's guns in the Jarama with a labor theory of value in mind. And Pickett's division did not march up Little Round Top because they feared the economic consequences of abolition. Whether the choice of weapons is words or guns, men fight to preserve the most beautiful of the pictures in their minds, and the pictures in my mind were different from the ideas in Jack's because of whence we came. Ben Elliott, who headed President Reagan's speechwriting shop and left to join Kemp, and I had often discussed what I called Jack's Big Rock Candy Mountain school of conservatism, where happiness is attained through endless tax cuts and uninterrupted economic growth. To me, America was a good country and a great country long before she was a rich country. Cal Coolidge notwithstanding, the business of America is not business. Ronald Reagan's economic agenda was not the reason some of us, as far back as 1975, urged him to challenge Gerald Ford. I recall one wit writing in the Wall Street Journal in 1984 as a traditionalist for Reagan, saying that the reason he objected to George Bush calling the Reagan tax program voodoo economics was not because he thought the phrase unfair, but because we thought it was redundant. And Jack and I have different styles. A positive, outgoing, upbeat, ebullient, optimistic man of the Congress, Jack's rhetoric is sprinkled with phrases like "my distinguished colleague" and "my good friend." While his convictions are conservative, his mindset is congressional. To me, the times required that we not only boldly enunciate our agenda for America, but expose and attack, with all the political weapons in our armory, those in Congress driving the United States toward disaster in Central America, Southern Africa, and Geneva. Football is not a contact sport, Vince Lombardi is said to have corrected a questioner. It is a collision sport. Dancing is a contact sport. Better than most, Jack Kemp knows that about football, but that is how I feel about politics. In the early days of the French Revolution, Abbé de Sieyès declared, "Now is the time to get more, after which we will demand and get everything." That is the correct mindset for our conservative counter-revolution. My good friend, the late Bryce Harlow, the tiny lobbyist from Oklahoma who was about 5 feet high and 100 pounds of political integrity, and who served 3 presidents, told me that Eisenhower had once taken him aside and exploded in exasperation over the endemic congressional disposition to compromise. "Bryce, don't get your presidents off Capitol Hill, because the truth might be here," and Ike stretched his left hand out to the far left, "or here," and Ike stretched his right hand out to the far right. "Your congressman will always come down here," and Ike brought his hands together midway between the 2 points. Among the reasons I wanted to run then was not only to make the case for us, but against them. And even though I had never held elective office, which some said was a fatal defect, I had spent 8 years in the White House as an assistant to 3 presidents. I had been to 3 Soviet summits and on Nixon's visit to China, and I had more experience in communication, radio, television, and the written word, than all the other Republicans taken together, with the possible exception of Pat Robertson. And communication, as well as convictions, is what modern politics and the modern presidency are all about. Some of the younger backbenchers in the White House press corps, whom I had come to know as friends, were encouraging me to run. "Pat, get in. You've got to. It's so boring," said one young lady from a national newspaper. "Pat, you can beat Kemp. I know it. Just get in," another told me. Even Sam Donaldson was heard to say that if Buchanan ran, he would take a leave of absence from the White House to cover the campaign. But personal considerations at last became paramount and decisive. The Washington Post is not only a sometimes savage antagonist of what I believe, it is my hometown paper. My 8 brothers and sisters and I were raised in Washington. My mother and father, 5 of my brothers and sisters, and 18 nieces and nephews still lived there. While a presidential campaign would be exciting for the extended Buchanan family, it would not be uniformly pleasant. Did I want to surrender my cherished privacy to live in that fishbowl? Did I want to spend much of my campaign explaining the 1,000,000 words I had written in my controversial syndicated column of 10 years, and the second 1,000,000 written confidentially in earlier White House days and secreted in the Nixon files which the presidential archivist seemed so anxious to dump? Did I want to go from cocktail party to cocktail party, begging for contributions, something I had never been able to do, and to borrow the millions of dollars for prospective mailings that could leave me, like John Glenn and Gary Hart, in debt the rest of my life? "Is the transport worth the pain?" wrote Emily Dickinson. The answer was yes. Indeed, all this was worth it, provided there was a chance to win. Yet while the hot-blooded on the right said go, the cool-headed responded, "You'll never make it. You'll go down to defeat and probably take your friends Jack Kemp and Pat Robertson right along with you." On the Friday after the meeting, in my windowless office, as Newsweek described it, in the West Wing of the White House, I was ruminating on my decision when a special delivery letter arrived from Bill Schultz, Washington editor of Reader's Digest. Adding flattery to his admonition, my friend gave it to me, as Cactus Jack Garner used to say, with the bark on. "I write as a friend, and one who agrees with you on virtually every public policy issue. But I think you would be making a grave mistake to run for president. First and foremost, you can't win. To plunge into a campaign in which you have no realistic chance, you do more than make likely the nomination of an issueless candidate who is doomed to defeat in November. By appearing to be a spoiler, a gadfly, you jeopardize the reputation you have built ever since your virtuoso performance before the Watergate Committee. You are the conscience of the conservative movement and should be for years to come. To risk that in a campaign that many will view as an ego trip is to permanently jeopardize a vast influence for the public good." "An ego trip," the man said. After agonized appeals from Howard Phillips and Tom Ellis, men I had given every reason to believe I was running, I put out a statement saying I feared a Buchanan campaign could be the Pickett's charge of the conservative movement, crippling the already prepared campaigns of fellow conservatives. I hadn't joined up with Richard Nixon 21 years ago to advance the conservative cause, only to become the instrument of its permanent injury in my middle age. After work that evening, as I drove up the George Washington Parkway toward home in McLean, I felt an immense weight had been lifted off me, and I felt at peace with myself. My wife Shelley greeted me smiling.